Welcome. This is the Mentally Whole podcast. I am your host, Lauren Green. This podcast is a safe place for us to have weekly discussions about mental health, Christ, personal development, and the tools to live our best lives. Stay tuned for a new episode. Hey guys, and welcome back to the Mentally Whole podcast. This is your host, Lauren Murray. I hope you guys are doing well. I hope you guys are mentally, emotionally, and physically well. So don't forget to subscribe, share, and rate the podcast, because when you do that, I know that you guys are enjoying the content. So we are continuing the discussion about fear. Today we are going to talk about the inner critic, but before we get into that, I have been getting back into reading books. I love reading books. I just kind of fell off a while ago, but now I'm back on, because one of the things that I learned is that people will pay for the knowledge that you have. And so I've been reading this book. If you're watching it on YouTube, you can see the book. I've been reading this book called The Gift, 12 Lessons to Save Your Life by Dr. Edith Edgar. So a little background about Dr. Edith. This is her second book, and she is in her 90s, and she was a Holocaust survivor. She was actually in Auschwitz, one of the worst concentration camps, one of the worst camps, Nazi camps, during the Holocaust, and she survived. And in this book, she shares a little bit about her journey, but she also shares different lessons to help people, get better and improve their life. And I wanted to touch on something that she wrote. So I just finished chapter 3 yesterday, and it's only, let me look, y'all. It's only 12 chapters, and I'm on chapter 3. I'm on chapter 4 now, but I just got this book last week, so I'm reading it kind of quick. So one of the things that I wanted to highlight in the book, the second chapter is called No Prozac at Auschwitz, and it also says the prison of avoidance. So each chapter is about a different prison of the mind. So one thing that she says that I think is very important, she says two things in this chapter. She says you can't heal what you don't feel, right? That's the first thing. And then the second thing is, as long as you're avoiding your feelings, you're denying reality. Dr. Edith is dropping bars, okay? Because that right there is a mouthful. You can't heal what you don't feel, and as long as you're avoiding your feelings, you are denying reality. That is so good. Dr. Edith, I gotta read her other book now, because this book is just blessing my whole little life. But I think that's important, because when we are in denial, we don't really face what's happening. We don't face what's going on, because we're like, no, that's not true. No, that's not that. No, that's not that. And when we're in denial, sometimes we make weird decisions because we're in denial about what's really going on. And when we don't face it head on, or don't face it at all, sometimes you're like delaying your process or delaying your progress because you fail to face the situation, or you fail to face your own feelings. And I think I talked about this before on the show. When I was in therapy, my therapist taught me about radical acceptance. So basically the concept of radical acceptance is to stop fighting reality and accept, like, what do you need to accept in your life, right? Stop denying it, stop running from it, accept it. And because once you accept something, you can move forward, you can make a game plan, you can make a strategy. Like, okay, I'm radically accepting that at a certain time I can't record episodes because I'm tired. So because of that, I need to figure out a time during the day or a time or pick a day that's best for me to record episodes. That's just an example. But I think we have to stop denying our feelings because our feelings matter. And another thing that she said, when you don't express how you feel, it gets stored in your body, right? And that could also mean we have different ailments and different conditions because we haven't truly expressed how we felt. Because even if you deny your feelings of fear, if you deny your feelings of being nervous, if you deny your feelings of being sad, those feelings just don't go away. They live somewhere, and they probably live in your mind and in your body. That's all I'm going to say about that book, because Dr. Edith is blessing me. And she wrote that book in her 90s. Like, sis got the wisdom. I'm here for it. I'm here for it. And then I guess next week I'll tell you about the other book that I'm reading, because I'm reading 2 books right now along with everything else that I read. Yeah. And if you have a hard time with expressing your feelings, get you a journal. Start writing. I love to write my feelings in a journal. It just gets everything out because, I used to just hold everything in and not talk about it. Get you a journal. They like $5. $1 at the dollar store. Get you a compositional book. They $1. Hello. Get you a journal. The cute ones a little more. They like $5, $6. But you can get you a compositional book and start writing today. Or if you don't feel like writing, you can do audio journals and record on your voice memo app on your phone. There's multiple ways to this. And if you don't like that, you can do Google Docs and write it in a Google Doc. I do that too. So let's actually get into the topic for the day, because we're kind of like not on topic. So we are talking about the inner critic. And so you're probably wondering, like, what is the inner critic? So, matter of fact, if you have never listened to an episode, I'm going to go over the definitions of fear. So fear means an unpleasant emotion caused by the belief that someone or something is dangerous, likely to cause pain or threat. It means an unpleasant feeling triggered by the perception of danger, real or imagined. So let's get into the inner critic. So what is the inner critic? The inner critic, we probably have tons of tons of statements in our heads, right? And so the inner critic is something that constantly criticizes. The inner critic is that voice that constantly criticizes, belittles, judges us, right? The inner critic, that voice can be cruel, it can be damaging, it can magnify the negative, it can take a toll on our self-esteem and our emotional well-being. It can also sound like a nagging voice. This inner critic reminds me of unnecessary chatter. It reminds me of like back when old TVs, when you couldn't get a signal and the screen would just go white and you would hear all that noise. It reminds me of that. Like, you hear that noise. It also reminds me of the good angel and the devil. I like to watch a lot of 90s shows like Sister and 2000 shows and things like that. And one of the things they always did consistently in those shows is they always had a moment where the person had like a good angel on one side and a devil on the other side. And the good angel's like, no, you shouldn't do that. You should do this. And the devil's like, well, girl, you should do it. Turn up, suffer the consequences later. That's what I feel. That's what it reminds me of the inner critic. So you have that one voice like, you're ugly, you're stupid, you're not good enough, something's wrong with you, you're stupid. And then you have so the opposite of the inner critic is the inner cheerleader. And so your inner cheerleader is like, girl, you got this, you're good, you're beautiful, you're this, you're amazing, you're wonderful. But you also have that inner critic that sneaks up, right? Sneaks up like a snake. And so this also reminds me of another book that I read. As a matter of fact, it's on my phone. Now I don't even know where my phone is. But, I am a Christian, and so I'm a believer, amen, of Jesus. And one of the things in this book that he wrote, he said that a lot of times demonic thoughts or negative thoughts most of the time start with I. They don't start with you're ugly. They start with I'm ugly, I'm stupid, I'm fat, I'm dumb, I made a horrible. They always start with I. They never start in third person. Now, if they start in third person, then I don't know, sis. I don't know what's going on with that. But most of the time, your thoughts start with I, and oftentimes our negative thoughts start with I. So you're probably wondering, what are ways to deal with your inner critic? What are ways to kill the noise, as I call it? So when I first got the idea to do this episode, I was like, oh, well, let's talk about kill the noise, because in life you have internal noise, which is your own thoughts, your own feelings, all the things, and then you have external noise, and external noise is the voice of other people, just different, the voice of other people, opinions, what people think about you. That's like external noise. And so, sometimes we have to kill the noise internally. We have to say like, okay, shut up, I'm amazing, right? I'm not about to talk down about myself. Like, I got this and I can do it. So 3 tips to kill the noise. So I'm either going to call this inner critic or kill the noise, or just both, because you can do like a subtitle thing when you publish this. So 3 tips to kill the noise. So the first thing first is, do not act out on what your inner critic says, right? Whatever your inner critic says, do not act out on it. Don't believe it, honestly, because sometimes your inner critic probably says wild thoughts, wild things to you. So don't act out on it. Number 2, recognize and acknowledge the thoughts of your inner critic. It is so, so important to recognize when these thoughts come up. Like, are these thoughts coming up when you're starting a new project? Are these thoughts coming up when you're talking to a new bae? Are these thoughts coming up in a new relationship? Are these thoughts coming up when you think about starting your business? Like, when do these thoughts come up? Recognize it, acknowledge it. And also, if these thoughts do come up, immediately speak life. Immediately speak life to yourself, right? Immediately, if a thought comes up like, oh, I'm stupid, be like, no, I'm thebomb.com, and I'm not believing that about myself. Like, you have to combat the negative with the positive immediately. Immediately. And then the last tip is to choose the best solution to the issue. Sometimes certain things you can't change right away. So for example, if you want to work on the thought of which one? The thought of I'm not good enough, you might need to go to therapy, work out some things. And, right now it might be a hard time to find a therapist because a lot of therapists are booked. You might have to do other things. You might have to go to a coach person or a coaching program. What else? Or even the thought of something is wrong with you. You might need deeper assistance. Like, you might need a therapist to really walk you through, okay, why do you think something is wrong with you? Why do you think you are not good enough? Because some of these negative thoughts that we have might be deeply rooted. Or some of these thoughts that we have might be from a person that told us that years ago. It could have been a seed planted by someone when you were a child, and you need to uproot those thoughts that you have. I think that's it, y'all, about the inner critic. But yeah, choose the best solution to the issue. So for example, if you feel like you're ugly or you don't feel good about your appearance, okay, what can you do to make yourself feel good? Do you need to go buy some lipstick? Okay, because I know when I put on a red lip, I feel like the bomb.com. I haven't worn a red lip in a while, but when I put one on, I feel good about myself. Do you need to like buy new clothes? Do you need to exercise? Do you need to like have a skincare routine? Like, what is it that you can do to flip the narrative that you tell yourself? Right? I think that's important. I think sometimes we tell ourselves the story in our minds, and it develops, and our inner critic develops strongly. And it's like, God don't want that for you, right? God does not want you to feel bad about yourself. He wants you to feel good about yourself. Point blank, period. And also, we have to turn down that inner critic. We have to turn down the inner critic. We have to turn down the voice of the devil, and we need to increase our inner cheerleader, increase the voice of the Lord in our lives. Yeah, that's what that is. And the best way to increase our inner cheerleader, increase the voice of God, is to spend time with God in prayer, reading your Bible, worship, talking to him throughout the day. Just increase that time with him, because he wants to spend time with you. He wants to go on this healing journey with you. He wants to see you whole. He wants to see you joyful. He wants to see you in a good space mentally and emotionally. So I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. I don't know what's going on, but I feel like since I'm recording video and audio, the episodes are longer. I don't know what's going on with that, but I'm here for it. And so I will be doing an IG live on Thursday, which is tomorrow, which is 2 days from now. This is Tuesday. But yeah, I will see you guys next week.